trying to reach the highest level possible in pretty much the hardest language forced me to develop my method or, my product or my solution to the point where it was pretty much better than anything else.
You've built a really big presence without actually spending, you haven't spent any money on ads, I don't think, right?
Yep. Never spent a penny so far.
Yeah, no money on ads and you've built this business.
Yeah, well, actually, after I had my, the kind of marketing mishap of where I tried to sell this product and it kind of blew up and got a ton of really bad press, I left YouTube and didn't upload a single video for a couple years. And my subscriber count actually doubled, even though I didn't upload a single video.
So over the years, each video still continues to collect views then? Because you've got videos with hundreds of thousands of views.
I was always on the cutting edge. I was talking about these ideas that still were not accepted yet. And then over time, finally, the rest of the market started to catch up. And when it did, my videos were all there for, people to go and watch.
If you were to build a marketing team today to help you get to your vision, right? What are the kinds of things that you would be looking for in a team of people that you would want to be on this mission with you?
Well, first of all, I would want them to have a deep understanding of what I'm actually talking about, because there's been a couple of times I had someone, write a little bit of copy for me, but if they don't really understand what I'm talking about, it's really obvious and it shows up in the copy. Then I think besides that, they would just have to do a good job at understanding my values.
What you just said is literally the biggest thing that I think marketers miss when they want to work with a business owner. They think it's about putting on their CV that they've made $5 million for so-and-so. They've done this for this person, they've done this for this person, they've created these numbers for this person. And I always tell marketers that I've worked with, true thought leaders that actually care about their marketplace, they don't really care so much about how much money you've made for other people. They're much more interested in, does this person get my values and is willing to reflect them? I say this to copywriters. Copywriters are like, it's hard to get a client. There's no clients. I'm like, bro, every single business owner is like, man, wouldn't it be great to find somebody that actually gets my business? I think that more business owners are struggling to find copywriters than they are copywriters trying to find business owners.
For sure. I think when I've had people write for me here and then in the past, a lot of times it feels like I can understand that they'll point out of see, I added in all these persuasion tactics, and I'll be like, okay, yeah, maybe that will work, but I also feel like I'm sacrificing or compromising on my own integrity in the process.
All right, so today I'm here with a special guest. I'm here with Matt versus Japan. Welcome to the show, bro. Really nice to have you here.
Hey, yeah, good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited for this interview because, I've been following you on YouTube actually for a long time. I've been following you before I even started writing copy and before I even became a marketer.
That's crazy.
Actually, part of the reason I got into copywriting was I wanted to go live in Japan. And part of my life, that chapter of my life involved learning Japanese and studying Japanese every day with headphones on and being a little bit bit of a, hermit and just literally in my room for 10 hours a day listening to Japanese. And I couldn't go to Japan, right? I couldn't go to Japan and I couldn't afford it or figure out how I'd make the money to get there. And then my life kind of took a different turn and I went into copywriting. But before that, I watched quite a few of your videos and it was quite inspiring, the journey to learn Japanese. And so, since then, you've grown a channel to 230,000 subscribers. You've got your own, info coaching business. You've moved to Japan from America. You've done a lot of really cool stuff over the last, it's been a decade. And I think that a lot of people watching this, they're going to benefit from this conversation, because I know a lot of people watching, they want to help their clients or business owners want to grow their business on YouTube and want to acquire more customers more affordably and build that audience of people that are qualified leads, not just, spend thousands of dollars on ads and barely make profit. So, you've built a really big presence without actually spending. You haven't spent any money on ads, I don't think, right?
Yep. Never spent a penny so far.
No money on ads and you've built this business. So it's let's chat about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds good.
So you got into YouTube for a different reason than many people. I think many of the people in our industry in marketing, they go into YouTube because they want to, they want to make money.
Yeah. At the very beginning, I wasn't thinking about making money at all. And that, I think, allowed me to kind of basically take a bunch of actions that were in line with all the principles you would learn if you were going to study how to grow an audience organically. But I just kind of lucked into it because, I was basically able to be extremely genuine and have, really high integrity in all my content because I actually wasn't thinking about making money in the very beginning. Very beginning, I just I had spent many 5+ years to completely dedicating my life to studying Japanese very, very intensively. And there was a lot of stuff in that process I had to figure out all on my own. And there was no one I could really ask. There at the time, there was pretty much no one talking about any of at least that particular style of learning on YouTube. And so by the end of it, I kind of just had a natural desire to share what I had figured out. And kind of like, yeah, I wanted at least some people to, be able to benefit from my hard-earned knowledge. And when I started making videos, I assumed that maybe like 4 or 5 people would watch them. And that was my mindset of like, if there's 4 or 5 people that want to learn Japanese as badly as I did when I first started, well, at least they'll benefit from this knowledge. And I didn't have any conception that actually it would grow and end up, I'd end up with a significant following.
Yeah, I think nowadays, you're one of the top go-tos to learn how to, speak Japanese. I'd say if somebody Googles how to learn Japanese, you'll probably pop up within an hour of their research. So that's quite cool. And I think for a few people that are watching this, they don't know this method that you have. So I know you probably repeated this quite a few times on many different interviews, but just real briefly, what would you say is the way that you learn Japanese that's different to most people?
Yeah. So I mean, the biggest things that are different is that I basically got, very fluent in Japanese without being in Japan. I did it all while still being at home in America, like basically while being in my room. And I did it also with hardly interacting with native Japanese speakers. Like I basically just stayed in my room, at least for the first couple years, and watched anime all day and just read manga all day and then made a bunch of flashcards and basically got fluent in Japanese through doing that. But I did it very intentionally. And I was trying to I optimized the whole process along the way. And yeah, I guess the philosophy is that if you want to speak really fluently like a native speaker, you need to build an intuition for the language. You studying the language consciously and trying to thinking about grammar rules and constructing sentences in your head while you speak, that's not very effective. It doesn't work no matter how much you practice it. Or at least it can never take you to true native-like fluency. If you want that native-like fluency, you need an intuition for the language that only comes from being exposed to that language, listening and reading that language for thousands of hours. And once you've put in those thousands of hours, you absorb the language, you start being able to speak it pretty naturally, even without having to spend that much time practicing speaking. So you need to practice speaking to a degree, but a lot of times people put way too much emphasis on the speaking over the listening. So yeah, eventually I did, make lots of Japanese friends, and that helped me perfect my Japanese, but the bulk of my Japanese ability I built up just alone in my room watching tons of anime, basically.
It's very interesting that we could say like the coaches, right? Or the people that have education businesses that help people online, the ones with the best products often didn't create that product for somebody else. It was often just for themselves, right? That they were like, you had this problem that you stuck in America and you couldn't go to Japan, or maybe I know you went to Japan once, but you were mostly in America, and so you had to solve this. I want to learn Japanese while I'm in America without Japanese people around me, without the like traditional courses. You came up with a unique solution for yourself first. And that unique solution is actually very compelling if we turn it into marketing and we say like how to learn Japanese, from your bedroom without going to Japan, without spending any more money on any courses, without going to traditional schools and reach near native like fluency. It's a pretty compelling marketing message, but it's not, you didn't create the marketing message. You just solved a problem that's real. And I think a lot of people, they don't do that with their offer, and then they struggle with their marketing and they're like, why is my marketing not converting? It's like, well, you haven't created a product that solves something that's like a legitimate problem. You're going the other way around. You're like, all right, let me sell something and let me figure out later what product I should make. Whereas I think the best products I've seen, like I said, they're the kind of, you start by solving the problem and then you have a product.
Yeah. And I think to add on to that a little bit, I got lucky in that I ended up solving basically the hardest version of that problem, because first of all, Japanese is pretty much the hardest language to learn if your native language is English. And I had a crazy obsession with being as good as possible and sounding as much like a Japanese native speaker as possible. And I didn't want to compromise at all. I didn't want to have a foreign accent or anything like that. So that forced me to basically, trying to reach the highest level possible in pretty much the hardest language, forced me to develop my method or, my product or my solution to the point where it was pretty much better than anything else, because that's what it that's what I wanted to solve myself. So
Yeah, raising the standard. That's the big thing I've found, with all the copywriters and marketers I've coached over the years with the best products. They just raise the standard. It's like, okay, this is good, but how can we make it better? This is good, but how can we make it better? It's the same with my dojo, of coaching copywriters. I mean, I've been building it for, when this interview comes out, almost 5 years, maybe like 4 years and 10 months. And every single time I wanted to grow the business, I always found myself saying, okay, I want to go and do marketing. I want to go and get more customers, but I'd actually just prefer to build the product better, make the dojo better. So you got 5 years of just every single time I wanted to grow and I was frustrated and I was like, we're not growing at the speed I'd like to grow. I would just pull my energy back into like, all right, let's build this product better and better and better. And over time, the maturity of that product, it just got so mature that I would say, I mean, I don't know anything on the market that's close to the quality, because I mean, 5 years of investing that time, it's actually funny. I don't consume too much of Hormozi's content, but I saw something from Hormozi. He said this was really good. He said, the bigger your vision and the bigger the dream that you, I guess you could say like the longer term that you're thinking, the less people are thinking the same length of long term, right? And I'm paraphrasing. And so the more likely that there's no competition, the higher chance of you winning. So the further out you make the goal, the bigger the goal is, the less people you're competing against, the more likely that you're going to win, because nobody else is building for that, And I think of my industry, and I'd love to know your thoughts on this as well, but, like building the dojo, building my product and my offer, I don't think that people were sitting there thinking, how do we build a mastermind that's going to be here 5, 10, 20 years from now, whereas I was building for that. So like in the early days, I was competing against copy coaches and courses, but over time, those courses, they didn't stand up to that because that wasn't their vision, right?
yeah, no, I think the exact same thing applies to me as well, because almost every language learning product on the market just focuses on the very beginner stage and getting you from like 0 to like a basic level. Maybe you could have a basic conversation, and it doesn't deal with anything after that. And I think the reason is because, of course, when you look at the market, most people trying to learn a language are beginners. So it's kind of the obvious, in a certain sense, it's the obvious business choice of like, go after the biggest chunk of the market. But for me personally, that just wasn't what I was interested in. I was always interested in how do you get to like native like fluency. And so that was mostly what I talked about. And I think especially in the beginning, because of that, my content didn't appeal to a lot of people, because a lot of people were like, I don't care about reaching a native level. But there was a small group of people that did really care about that, and no one was catering to them at all. And I was pretty much the only one actually talking about like the whole path. Like I think you mentioned before, one of the videos that you liked of mine that I made back in the day was just a simple video where I just explained, here's the timeline of how you're going to go from 0 to native like fluency. Year 1, you're going to do this. Year 2, you're going to do this. 3, you're going to do this. And it's assuming that you're super dedicated and you're spending pretty much every spare moment you have on this thing for multiple years. And like, no one else was talking about that kind of time scale and that level of commitment. And when I was making those videos, like I said, I thought that it was only going to appeal to a very small number of people. Like I was like, I know this is too intense for most people, but I don't care. This is just what I'm interested in. It's for the small number of people interested. And to a degree, more people were interested in than I thought. But also, I didn't need everybody to be interested in it because, a relatively small group of dedicated people where they have a problem and I'm the only one with or at least I have the best solution, that's enough to make a business out of,
So then how do you talk to that sophisticated portion of the market? Because a lot of business owners, they have this dance that they're like trying to figure out, like, we've got a decent solution, we're building it bigger, we've got an audience, a decent audience, but now, let's say our channel's at like 20,000 subscribers, and like we're kind of deciding, should we try and make this more of a broad market offer, or should we cater towards the more successful people that have already kind of gone on the journey? They're going to definitely have more money to invest. They're much more serious. They appreciate this a lot more. Let's say they do want to go for that sophisticated market, because I know that's where you've got a lot of experience talking to those more sophisticated people that are like ready to, like what kind of stuff do you want to think about when you craft and generate videos for people like that? Like, what is the kind of stuff on their mind?
I mean, So like basically what I always did was kind of talk as if people already understood the basics of like the premise that I was working with. So again, this is something that in hindsight, was pretty like worked pretty well from a strategic perspective, but I didn't do it intentionally at all at the time. Like basically, I was very inspired by this website that was around, this blog called All Japanese All the Time, and the kind of structure, the basic premise and structure of my method I got from that website. So when I first made YouTube videos, I framed the YouTube videos as I'm building on top of this blog. Don't watch my videos till you've gone and read the blog. The blog explains all the basics. I couldn't be bothered to go and explain the basics because they were too boring to me at that point, right? So I was like, go read the blog and then come back to me and I will kind of take off where the blog left off. And what I realized is a lot of people like wouldn't go and read the blog because they were too lazy, basically. And so I realized like I should make content that's like for beginners to help introduce it and stuff. And I made some of that, but I always was pretty bad about that kind of onboarding process, that like kind of taking the average language learner walking on the street that isn't sophisticated and turning them into a more sophisticated, user. That's something in my mind. I was like, I always thought of myself as I'm doing a bad job of that. I need to go and do a better job of that. I need to go make more videos that like explain the basics. But I hated doing that because it was too boring to me. So I basically just didn't. And what I found happened is that some people just kind of figure it out. Like some people would just like watch enough of my videos that they would just kind of pick up the basics just from kind of like gleaning, like piecing together a bunch of my videos. And also a lot of my hardcore fans would go and do it for me. Like they would go and be like, here's like, they would write on like Reddit and other websites, like, here are all the basics. Like you have to just trust me. Like once it's going to not make sense at first, but once you get it, you're going to realize that this guy is like the best guy out there. And a lot of those hardcore kind of fans like did it for me. And there were other people that already did, read the website or whatever. So all I did was just speak, assuming they already knew the basics, and everything kind of took care of itself in a way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, that makes sense from a marketing, standpoint, right? Because you're talking to people at a certain level. You were expecting the person that's watching to be at this certain level. And I find lots of businesses that have a sophisticated, let's call it ideal customer profile, the ICP, they attract the newer people too, because it's aspirational marketing. It's like, let's say I'm talking to copywriters who are making $10,000 a month, and I say, okay, I'm going to show you in this video how to go from, making okay money as a copywriter to making $25,000. Yeah, I'm going to attract the guys at 10K, but a lot of people at 2-3K a month, they're like, there's an aspirational thing here. It's like, I want to see what to do when I get there, like what do I do next? And when I remember watching your videos, I think I also was like that. I was pretty new in my journey. I had learned other languages before, so I wasn't completely a beginner. I'd learned some French and Spanish and Italian. So I was familiar with the ideas of, like immersing in the language. But I was watching your videos, you were talking about these next level concepts, like down the line. It was like future pacing into my future where I would be. And I think that very much inspired me, because you almost live in the future when you watch that kind of a video. You're like, oh, like this is where I'm going to be. That's exciting to me. I want to enjoy that part of the process. And I wasn't quite there yet, but I would watch it and I'd be like, that is inspiring. So yeah, that's a pretty good insight. Definitely a very powerful way to write copy too. You write copy and you're struggling to decide, like, do we talk to guys that are at the lower level that are just getting started in, let's say, business? You're selling a business opportunity. It's like, do we talk to those people at that lower level, or do we talk to people at the higher level? And then if you just talk to people at the higher level, you often bring those guys along. Like, I don't know if you saw Hamozi's recent,
little bit.
He had this massive book launch, right? So he had this massive book launch. And when I went through his webinar and the way he presented it, he was talking to business owners, predominantly to his slightly more sophisticated audience, and the rest kind of tag along because they want to be included, So yeah, it's interesting how that works.
Yeah, I think that like the majority of language learning content out there is appealing to someone who's totally new to language learning, right? And so when you go and kind of Google or search on YouTube, like how to learn a language, like all the initial content that comes up that has like, millions of views, they're all saying the same stuff, and it's kind of obvious stuff. It's, you start very quickly if you're like trying to figure out this problem of how do I really learn a language well, you start hearing all the same advice over and over. And then I think when if someone stumbled across one of my videos that was more sophisticated, they might not understand it at first, but I think there's intuitively you can feel that I'm talking about something at like a higher level, and I'm breaking down higher
Mm.
level concepts. I have a longer time scale in mind. I'm really talking about how to reach fluency, not just how to like handle the basics and stuff like that. I'm thinking about things more systematically, and thinking about things from like a bigger perspective. And I think people can sense that they get a sense of like, oh, this sounds like he's talking, like there's something here that's not, that I haven't seen anywhere else. Like it seems like this person has thought about this more deeply than other people, or has a different perspective on this. And even though they can't understand it right off the bat, they become interested and want to, they have, it kind of creates a desire to understand more deeply, because they kind of sense like,
Yeah.
oh, this is maybe kind of going over my head now, but I sense that there's something really deep here, so I want to understand it. And I guess in my case, in order to really succeed at this language learning process and using this method that it assumes you're trying to reach a really high level, you need an insane amount of commitment anyway. So I'm sure I do lose a lot of, on average language learners that are kind of have a surface level interest but not super committed. I'm sure they're going to be like, I don't know what this guy's talking about, bye. But those people, at least most of them, probably wouldn't have ever really got on board anyway.
Yeah, like they wouldn't have experienced any results with your coaching.
Yeah, they
Because
probably wouldn't
it's
have
like
stuck with it. They wouldn't have
probably
really,
would have just gone, yeah. Mm.
So I think like, yeah, it's okay for the barrier to entry to be a little high when it's the type of product that you really need a lot of commitment and dedication to succeed with anyway.
Yeah, it's better for client success, in my opinion. Like my offer is the same. It's I don't coach beginners. I just don't feel that content style has ever really excited me too much, to be honest. I feel like everybody's already said that. I feel like at least
same.
for business growth, it's like there's enough content on how to start your business, and there's 100 people that already talk about that. And every single day there's a new video, how to get started today with $0 or whatever, like there's enough of those pieces of content that I don't want my message to the world to just be a repeat of 50 other people's YouTube videos all thrown into AI and rebranded with my story. It just, to me, doesn't resonate. It's like, I would just rather talk to people about the stuff that I'm actually thinking about. And for the course creators or coaches or infopreneurs that are more thought leaders, I would say are more thought leaders, I think this approach actually is more profitable. I think it's more, it resonates better. And it's just you're much more aligned. There's a great marketer, Alan Sultanich. I interviewed him on this channel, and he's also very much talks about those higher level, more advanced concepts of marketing. And sometimes if you read his stuff and you're nearer into marketing, I mean I read this stuff and sometimes I don't know what he's saying. I have to read it twice to better understand the concept behind it. It's doing the same thing as what you're saying. Like you're challenging them to level up and to take it to that next step, but very few people are actually talking about those concepts. So it has there's a differentiation element to it too. From that perspective, is we're talking about something that you've heard before, but now we're talking about it at the most sophisticated level. That puts you as an authority, that puts you as an expert, that puts you as a thought leader, without actually having to. It's very interesting, right? And if a lot of people don't know this, I don't think many people saw you speak Japanese and for like quite a while. Right?
Yeah.
Like you had a lot of those videos and you weren't speaking Japanese yet. And so you built this authority and expertise without even demonstrating the Japanese ability. But because of the way you articulated the problems and the solutions, people assumed that you were good. I remember I was like, yeah, Matt must be brilliant in Japanese. And then when you did record yourself, everybody was quite delighted to see that you worked pretty good, So it was like,
yeah,
good.
that's
okay,
funny.
he is
I
good.
totally forgot about that.
Yeah.
But for the longest time, I had like 1 4-minute video of me, introducing myself in Japanese, and yeah, that was it. But yeah, I think just the way that I talked about it and like describing my own experience, it was like, I would have to have been like an actor and a like fiction author in order to make all that stuff up and sound that convincing and authentic like when I spoke it. In reality, I was just speaking my experience. That's why I think it came across as being that authentic and why it was convincing to people, because I was just being really real,
What would you say is the biggest challenge you had once you got that initial traction to grow from like getting that core little tribe that liked your stuff to actually becoming really relevant, especially with the advanced kind of material that you talked about, like getting it? Now you're at 230,000 subscribers. How did you go from that smaller channel to there?
Well, on the business end, I definitely had no idea what I was doing and made like every mistake that that you could make in a pretty bad form. Like pretty early on, I started working with a business partner, and I mean, he's like a good guy, but we probably our personalities weren't really fit for working together. We were kind of both wanted to be the boss, basically, and weren't really fit for like a partnership. And so, I mean, at the beginning, yeah, I think part of it was that like I also was never satisfied with my method. So I was always like getting feedback because at the beginning the method was just based on my one experience, right? Like N of one. And that's still pretty powerful. But once I started building an audience, people started taking my advice, and I get like a lot of feedback from my audience, and then I would update my recommendations based on that. And some people didn't like that because they were like, "Oh, you're not an all-knowing God. Like the fact that you just changed your recommendation, that meant that you were wrong before. What if you're wrong about something again? And I'm going to take your advice." But a lot of people were like, "Oh, wow, he actually like admits when he's wrong. That's a rare trait. He's actually, he prioritizes finding the truth over just claiming that he's right all the time." And so I think for a lot of really sophisticated people that like earn their respect more, and they kind of felt that I was in the cutting edge, because I was, there were still things that I was trying to further optimize and answer questions that hadn't been answered yet. And I think a lot of people felt like they were kind of coming along for the ride of like riding that cutting edge wave. And I think that built a really like at the time I just had a Patreon, but I think it was like a really big Patreon. Like it was like me and my buddy, and we had no idea what we were doing with like marketing, advertising, or anything, but we like got to over 10K a month like pretty quickly on the Patreon.
That's
And
cool.
yeah, I think that's because there was like a small number of really dedicated people that were like, respected that. And we were also we created some software that helped optimize the process and stuff like that, had made things possible that no one had made yet. And so, yeah, I think a lot of people came along for the ride. We had something really good, but then I had like a really nasty breakup with that business partner where we decided we didn't want to work together, couldn't really find a way to make it amicable, and it became a very public thing. It was like very nasty. And so that already kind of like set me back, kind of had to restart again from scratch after that, at least from the business standpoint. And then I started again, but then I met this other guy that was actually like into marketing. And because up until I met him, I had never studied edit. I didn't know anything about marketing at all. I didn't even really know that marketing was a thing, basically. And he was kind of like an old
Yeah.
school marketer, and he, was making a lot more money than me. And he was like, "Hey, you could make a lot more money if you take this big audience that you built and monetized it in the right way." And I was like, "Okay, teach me your ways." And I kind of just blindly let him take the reins. But his style of marketing was so different than the way that I had unknowingly marketed myself the whole time that it ended up really backfiring, because my whole strategy was being like very, I was talking to a sophisticated audience, and I was very high integrity. I was saying like, yeah, there is no, way to get fluent overnight. You can't get fluent in 5 minutes a day. It takes a big dedication. There is no big secret that everyone's hiding for you. Here are all the, I kind of
Yeah.
gave
Yeah.
away all the most important stuff for free. And then, when I worked with this guy, the way that we made a course together that taught Japanese pronunciation, and the marketing was all about, like, very scarcity based, and like, oh, we have this secret. The only way you're going to get the secret is if you buy this thing, and there's only a limited number of spots, and the typical stuff that like I think can work when done a little bit more tastefully in different contexts. But it was a little bit over the top, and it was so different from the way I'd always done my messaging that it came across as very inauthentic and jarring to my audience, and it created like a big backlash. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
I learned, I kind of
Mm.
realized like full circle that like actually what I'd been doing all along kind of was good marketing without knowing it, because of all the stuff that we've been talking about. And yeah, now I've kind of again restarted my business pretty much completely from scratch in January of this year. And it's been, yeah, going pretty smoothly, like growing steadily kind of since then. And so far, yeah, for these last like I guess 8 months now, 8, 9 months, almost 10 months now. Wow, time flies. But yeah, I've just been doing what we were talking about, of just assuming my audience is sophisticated, talking to a sophisticated audience, and it's been working pretty well. I mean, I do have the benefit of everything I've built up over all these years. You know, I'm already kind of established as an authority in the kind of language learning YouTube space, so I'm definitely riding on the tails of that. But yeah.
Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, when we met up in Japan, I don't remember if I think it was November. Was it in winter? I think it was in winter. I remember wearing a jacket. Yeah, so maybe like just at the end of last year, before you started your new community on School, and you rebuilt how you're going to be delivering your IP. And yeah, you built this audience, and it's cool to see that it worked out pretty well so far, and you're growing it pretty well. And that's the power of being an authority in a space, is that you can, I think people are okay with I mean, I remember when I saw some of the, let's call it, drama that you had on social. I don't know, like, I almost wonder if I can ask you this, like, do you think that there was some element of growth organically, even though maybe on the business side things didn't pan out the same way, but like maybe just the fact that there was this sort of something was happening that's a bit energetically charged, that you also kind of got a bit of impressions during that time? Because a lot of people say like getting negative. Yeah, okay.
I mean, well, in terms of, if you're just measuring on, how many people know me, have heard of me, are aware of me, it definitely like contributed to that, because it was, like at the time, because people love this type of drama, right? So
right, yeah, so
the fact that it was very negative press, but like, yeah, it was within the Japanese learning community, it was like all anyone was talking about for a couple of weeks,
yeah.
And so definitely, like, again, it's hard to say whether it was like net positive, because
sure,
my reputation is still kind of recovering from that. But yeah, I mean, it definitely worked in the sense of like getting a lot of eyeballs.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe when you say that your reputation's still recovering, it's just because you have a certain vision and how you want to carry yourself, and you hold yourself to a very high standard of what you want to put out on the market. But I think that the majority of the marketplace didn't really know all the details, and I think that a lot of them, I think a lot of people in general in marketplaces, they don't, the hero becomes the villain for a while, and then they want the villain to become the hero again. They want their own sort of journey, because they're at home and they want some entertainment. It doesn't really change anything for them. They didn't spend any money. It doesn't make any difference. And even if they spend money, when anything less than $1,000, it's like negligent. It doesn't matter, like that. If you really $1,000 is life changing money, and it's gonna affect you forever, then you really, I don't know, like it's not a big deal, But I've seen a lot of people, they go from this in the influencer or coaching space, especially with like business coaches, right? You see like a business coach, they go from being this like hero of coaching, and then suddenly, I don't know, 2 or 3 people are upset with their new product for some reason. Either they didn't fulfill properly, or the promise was too aggressive, or just maybe a mistake, or maybe that they targeted the wrong people. Then they become the enemy for a while, and then people want to see them become the hero again. So it seems to just be this like ebb and flow in the marketplace. Like regardless of what happened with that business partner, do you think you would have done some things differently, like building that business in public? I think a lot of people, they deal with this. Like I've had business partners that we didn't continue products together, and we didn't continue things together. I always kept a lot of that stuff private, but I know because you had a business partner that also kind of had a public presence, it was more of a, like, do you think you would have handled that press differently now, knowing what you know today?
Like going back how far, like to the initial business partner breaking up?
Well, anything that comes to mind to you, like I think I could have done this better, or I would have done this part better in building.
I would have done everything differently, pretty much, like from the business aspect. Like in terms of what I did on YouTube, I think that was really good, and I wouldn't have really changed that. In terms of like I made really high quality videos that targeted a sophisticated audience, and I think that is what really built up my reputation. I think I did a good job of that. In terms of like how I monetize that, the business side, I pretty much totally fucked up. I would have like definitely do that all over again. I probably wouldn't have entered a business partnership, I would have just tried to hire people. I think for me, like being in a 50-50 partnership is really tricky because it's no one has the final say, you know. Maybe I would have entered a partnership where it was like 60-40 or 70-30 or something where like I had the final say, because I think ultimately, just due to my personality, like I want to feel like it's my business and I have control and I'm the one, you know, pulling the levers at the end of the day. For me to be like really motivated about my business and feel like it's like my passion, I have to have, has to be my thing. That's just my personality. And so yeah, I think the 50 going into the 50-50 partnerships was definitely kind of what I think was the core of things. And then also, yeah, like I yeah, like I said, I wouldn't have done marketed in that kind of like scarcity based way. I would have done it in a the way I always did it, which is kind of like just being honest and being you know, just being having confidence that's backed by actual knowledge and skill, and just being very transparent. You know, that's what like worked for me. I think I should have done that even more, and not have tried to kind of like, you know, pull all these false scarcity levers and stuff like that. Like,
so over the last year, I've seen something I've never seen before. Copywriters and marketers, they're making more money than ever before, especially the top 1%. And if you want to be one of them and you want to join us and you want to get, you know, insights into exactly what's happening in our industry and also get my raw and unfiltered thoughts, the stuff that we're not sharing here on YouTube, then apply to join my email list at list.copywriting.org. And yeah, I'll see you in my next email. Now let's get back to the video. There are a lot of business owners that have a similar challenge to this, where they have a vision, they're not marketers, that's not their core skill, they're a thought leader in whatever it is that they're coaching, but they've got a marketing team that also there's only, there are certain ways to maximize profit, right? And so the marketing team is obviously proficient in maximizing profit, and maximizing profit, I don't just mean like at the cost of long-term growth. I mean finding that balance between matching the personality and the values and also maximizing the profit. But the business owner has a slightly different vision. And this is a challenge that I think many business owners have, because the best business owners I've worked with as a marketer are usually marketers, because they already know, they already have that side. So they can kind of direct the marketing as well. Whereas when you're a coach that isn't a marketer, you're more of a thought leader. You're a bit more, you're kind of leaning more on that marketing team, but at the same time, you're still trying to bring your vision to reality. The marketing team's not necessarily fully synced up with your vision. If you were to build a marketing team today to help you get to your vision, right? Like, what are the kinds of things that you would be looking for in a team of people that you would want to be on this mission with you?
well, first of all, I would want them to like have a deep understanding of what I'm actually talking about, because there's been a couple of times I had someone, you know, write a little bit of copy for me, but if they don't really understand what I'm talking about, it's really obvious and it shows up in the copy. So like they wouldn't have to off the bat, but they would at least have to be willing to like go and learn enough that they could like have the actual understanding, because I think it's not possible to talk to that sophisticated audience without that understanding, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, then I think besides that, I mean, they would just have to do a good job at understanding my values, and you know, maybe they could share my values, or they could not share my values but understand my values and be able to, you know, write in that frame, you know, which would be like, you know, for me, that I mean, also I think part of it now is that, like I said, since I kind of like you know, if you think of it as like a spectrum between like, you know, being not like basically having no marketing and just having like 100, you know, just I don't know, me being a thought leader versus like, you know, pulling some of those marketing like persuasion levers, I guess, that are there. Like I think that there is a balance where like, yeah, like a little bit of that, everyone, you know, isn't it pretty much just helps if you do it tastefully and like the right way. But because I went too far and got burned, I'm like, my pendulum is like swung a little bit to the other side like right now. But ultimately in the long term, you know, it'd be about finding that, yeah, that balance where, you know, it's tasteful. It's not giving people that impression of like, oh, this guy's just trying to make money. He's just, you know, making up false scarcity for the sake of making more money and stuff like that. Like, I'd have to like all feel genuine, but still like basically maximize conversion as much as possible within that, limitation of still being genuine and coming across that way.
Yeah, what you just said is literally what you just said is literally it's the biggest thing that I think marketers miss when they want to work with a business owner. They think it's about putting on their CV that they've made $5 million for so-and-so. They've done this for this person. They've done this for this person. They've created these numbers for this person. And I always tell marketers that I've worked with, thought leaders, okay, e-commerce business owners, maybe they're more interested in those kinds of numbers because they're selling product off the shelf. It's just a pure business. Some digital creators, they're just selling a course. That's what they want. But true thought leaders that actually care about their marketplace and have more of a vision about their market, and they just found a way to monetize what they want to do anyway, like in your case and many thought leaders' cases, they don't really care so much about how much money you've made for other people. They're much more interested in, does this person get my values and is willing to reflect them? Can they write the way I write? Do they understand who I'm talking to and treat that person the way I would want to treat that person? That voice, I call it like voice, right? Like, can they speak your voice in the marketing? If they get that right, that's much more important to me and to other business owners than it is if you've made $5 to $10 million, It's like such a big shift. And people, this is why it's like AI doesn't do this for you. Like, imagine trying to get AI to generate a video for you.
I generally don't. I mean, I know some people like study this of like, how can you prompt the AI to get better output? But in general, I don't like to have AI write things for me because like, I don't want it to feel like it's written by AI, because I think that would make sophisticated people lose trust in me immediately, right? Like when I'm reading something and it just feels like this guy just had ChatGPT, churn out some shit, then like I'm like, well, I could have just went and asked ChatGPT myself. I don't, then why am I reading your stuff? So yeah, like for sure, like yeah, I think when I've had people write for me here and then in the past, like a lot of times it feels like, I can understand that they'll point out of like, see, I added in all these persuasion tactics, and I'll be like, okay, like, yeah, maybe that will work, but I also feel like I'm like sacrificing or compromising on like my own integrity in the process. Whereas like the few times where I was really happy with it, it just felt like, oh, I wish I wrote this, like I couldn't have wrote it, but I wish that I did. And like, I think, yeah, being able to generate that feeling for somebody, yeah, I mean, is what I would imagine that, yeah, people like me and other people would want. But yeah, I think it's actually really hard to come by. In my experience, it's been hard to come by.
Yeah, I say this to copywriters. Copywriters are like, it's hard to get a client. There's no clients. I'm like, bro, every single business owner is like, man, wouldn't it be great to find somebody that actually gets my business? It's actually, I think that more business owners are struggling to find copywriters than they are copywriters trying to find business owners. It's not easy to find somebody that truly gets your brand. And I mean, you've been doing this for so long that somebody just jumping into your business after 1 week, nobody's going to be able to catch up unless they spend a considerable amount of time consuming your content and actually dedicating themselves to your message and your vision. I don't think you can do that as a freelancer with 10 other clients. It's like, oh, let's just add Matt to the stack. Like, you're not going to get it. You're not going to be able to deliver anything that reflects the voice. So let's talk about this voice. Now, you've had a few different chapters of your voice over all the years that you've been on YouTube. How did you develop that voice and refine it? Because you obviously had the thought leadership, but packaging it and thinking about it in the way that you carry yourself and how you want to present yourself to your audience. I've seen your evolution over all those years. How did you go about that? And was it intentional? Was it accidental? Like, what was that process like?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was a process of responding to the response that my content was getting. Like, at first, I was really, I think, just making videos that, I would have wanted to watch personally, And then in response to that, you get a lot of questions, you get a lot of comments. Sometimes they're actually formulated as questions, sometimes they're just formulated as criticism. But either way, it lets you get a sense of what your audience doesn't yet really understand that it would serve them to understand, at least from from my perspective, right? So then
What do you mean by criticism?
like sometimes they just be like, oh no, you're wrong because actually XYZ. And
Oh, I see.
then I'm like,
Okay.
yeah, then that would give me, then I understand their worldview, right? I'm like, oh, this person thinks I'm wrong because they don't understand this other thing that I'm taking that, to me was self-evident, but to them they don't know it yet. So
Oh, that's
then I
good. That's a
realized,
good way to get.
like,
Yeah, sorry to jump in here, but this is actually
yeah,
really, that's a really good insight. Is like using the criticism as actual content, not like a prompt, but like inspiration for content, because you see somebody that's getting an emotionally charged reaction from a piece of like a lack of knowledge, that you could actually bridge that gap. And wow, that's pretty good. I like that idea.
yeah, like I think some of my most popular videos were basically me starting with the premise of like a lot of people believe X is false, and whether or not you understand that or not, like totally changes your worldview in your language learning worldview, right? And how you're going to approach it. So then I just made like a super detailed video, just making very straightforward logical arguments with many examples, explaining to you why X is actually not true. And that was one of the most popular videos because I think people watched that. It literally changed their worldview in a little small way, right? They're like, oh, yeah, I get it now. I thought X was true, but X is just not true. And then that immediately throws out a bunch of the techniques that they thought would have been good and makes them now, then they're like, okay, well, so what do I do instead? And then they go and consume my other content and stuff like that. So yeah, I think
That's
it was
really good. I want to jump in again, man. Like this is this is a really good tactic or like strategy, because if you talk about something that has an emotional charge because it's a deeply held belief, you're hitting on the emotion that people care about. That's part of the reason people take action or consume content is the emotional benefit. But then the actual content you present logically, you kind of fuse the worlds together. You get that emotional reaction from the intensity of the topic, and then you actually create the logic that appeals to their intellect and appeals to what they're thinking about. And so you can actually deliver very high quality value that way.
Yeah, one of the funny things actually that kind of haunts me to this day is like I mentioned, I continue to update my method in response to like seeing what worked and didn't work for people, and sometimes someone else would just come up with a good idea that I didn't come up with, and I was like, oh yeah, that's a really good idea. I incorporated it into my method. And so one of the things I changed my mind on was how you should go about learning kanji. And I won't go into all the details, but basically I used to think that there was this one method that was the best way, and I made a 30-minute video making like a super in-depth logical argument using all these other examples and everything about why this was the best method. And it was a really successful video. I got a couple 100,000 of views, and it like single-handedly converted a lot of people into this method. And then years later, I realized that actually there's a better method, and it solves some of the flaws in that original method that I didn't really, I didn't have in mind originally. But that other original video was so good that like I can't convince people of like the new better method, because like the video was just so convincing to people. And
it worked on me. I know which one you're talking about. Haysig's method, right? The mnemonics. Yeah, I mean, I did that. I did 90 days of studying those characters with that sort of approach.
Yeah, and I mean, it still works. It's still,
it kind of helps,
like, yeah.
But
and I spent an entire month on that video. So I mean, the thing is, I need to make a new video. I need to spend a whole month on a new video, and I just haven't, never got around to that yet. And I think maybe that's why. But yeah, I mean, I guess I've really seen how much impact like one video can have on somebody if it's like a really well-made video. So I mean, yeah, that's always the way I went about making the videos, is that the production value was actually not very high. Like I always considered myself to be a shitty YouTuber. Like I never really figured out how my camera worked all the way. I never figured out how my lighting worked. Like I was just filming in my room and it looked like a bedroom. I pretty much had bare bones editing. Like I would use lots of B-roll, but like I didn't have any of the fancy editing tricks people have. And I always viewed that as a bad thing at the time. I mean, it's not a good thing, but I think in hindsight, it didn't really hurt me very much because the content of the video was really solid. Like the argument I was making was solid. The argument was easy to follow. The video was engaging enough because there was enough B-roll and enough examples I was giving. And that's what really mattered, because my content was not, it was not entertainment first and foremost. It was educational first and foremost. And the people that were watching it were invested in language learning, and meeting their goals. And so it didn't have to be like, Mr. Beast optimized, basically. It just had to do a good job at helping people understand language learning more so that they could reach their goals.
I think considering the type of person that watches the videos, they probably like the editing style because you were a guy in your room learning Japanese, and they're a guy in their room learning Japanese. So it's like a reflection. It's like, oh, this is sort of similar life, and he's living the same life as me, except he's a little bit further along on the journey.
Yeah, like my original videos were really just like, hey, let me turn on my webcam and like talk to you in my room with no editing. And that actually, that also appealed to an audience really strongly because it was so real, and authentic. And then later I did like brush up more and make these more polished videos, and they had broader appeal. But I have always noticed that my hardcore audience, like the most hardcore fans that stuck with me no matter what, were the ones that started watching me when I was just talking to a webcam in my room, like with no editing or anything.
With like hundreds of plastic bottles of water behind.
Yeah, like I didn't even make my bed. I just like, my bed's all messed up.
I just remember you had all the bottles, just like so much water.
Yeah, I mean, for a time, I kind of, like I said, a lot of this I realized in hindsight, I actually was doing things pretty well. Like I thought I had to have more professional videos and I had to talk to a, more basic audience. And I was like, the way I thought of it is I just can't be bothered. Like I should be doing that, but I'm just can't be bothered because it's so uninteresting. So instead I'm talking to the sophisticated audience and, can't be bothered to make the videos look more polished. But yeah, I think a lot of that actually worked in my favor because those, for all the stuff that we talked about in the beginning of this conversation.
I wonder if there's an element of intuition to it, because I've often found that I've also had certain things that I thought maybe I should do this, maybe I should do that. And then my gut just doesn't, I don't feel interested in doing it, but I also just don't feel like it's a priority. Like I just don't really feel like that's going to get me closer to what I actually have in mind. I just wonder, maybe it's actually not just luck. Maybe you're just not aligned with the vision. Like you actually wanted to create this for a certain perspective and certain person.
Yeah, like I don't know if I would personally use the word intuition, but I think there's something in what you're saying because like I wanted to talk to what people who I viewed as my peers, like I think that's like a natural human instinct, right? Like somebody who you're like, if this guy happened to like be in my class at school, like we'd probably be friends because we're kind of on the same wavelength and we're kind of thinking. So like those were the people who like I wanted them to understand my perspective and get them on board because I was like, you're like, you will like my method, you just don't understand it yet. So let me help you understand it, and then I know you'll be on board. Whereas there's other people who, maybe they're just inherently, they're not as interested in language learning, or they're not, like a big part of my thing was I wanted to optimize the process. I wanted to find the way that is going to get you there the quickest and get you the best results. And some people just genuinely are not interested in that. Like some people are like, hey, I just want to have fun. As long as it works well enough, that's good for me. And like all this talk about optimization, I just find it exhausting and it wears me down. So there were always people like that, and they'd always complain about how much they hated my content. But those people, I didn't really care about them, because I was like, if I met you in real life, I don't think we would vibe. I don't think you're not like the type of person that we would hit it off, Whereas when I saw the other people that they're really logical and they're making logical arguments about how to do it optimally, but they're just wrong because I think my way is better. Those are the people I'm like, I need to convince that guy. And then that's what would motivate me to make those really in-depth logical videos, because I was like, those logical people that care about optimization, they're going to watch this and be like, oh, I really appreciate this because now that I understand, I'm on board. So yeah, I think it was kind of that, like the people that I resonate with were the ones who I was naturally most motivated to make content for. And that ended up.
It's interesting. Japanese language learners, from my experience with the community, they're quite an emotionally reactive bunch of people. There's like, you wouldn't expect it, but I've found in my experience listening to them and seeing them behave, I think that they are quite reactive. It's quite funny.
The Japanese language learning community is completely insane. I mean, I think it's because, like, in general, the type of person that wants to learn a language, like, in broad, like, your average French learner, Spanish learner, even Chinese learner, like, they want to connect with other cultures. They're like social people, right? They want to go and be able to speak to new people that they can't yet speak to because there's a language barrier. So that's the type of person it attracts. Not the person that's like all thinking about optimization and reaching goals. A lot of them, they're just like, oh yeah, I want to connect with more people. I want to go and see the world. Whereas Japanese learners, a large proportion of them are interested in Japanese because they like anime. And anime attracts certain personality types. Like literally like more than half of my audience is like programmers, like computer programmers.
Oh, interesting.
And
That's
engineers.
an interesting insight.
Yeah, so I think Japanese learners are unlike learners of any other language because they're oftentimes very antisocial. Like they're people who are kind of terminally online, and you know, they and I think that's probably why they're so passionate about talking about this online. Well, first of all, they're that more kind of intellectually, logically minded type of person who might be a programmer or something, and yeah, they're very online, and that's what they're when they're passionate about something, they're very intense. So that when the other language learning communities look at the Japanese community, they're like, what the fuck is going on over there?
Yeah, what is going on over here? This is true.
And that was right in the center
actually
of all
really
that, so.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I think that there's also a really interesting insight there, because I would have never known that there's that many programmers, and if I knew that, let's say I was creating content and I was talking to that market, I would probably add quite a bit of B-roll that complements the lifestyle of a programmer, like the way that they experience life, like maybe make it more like a computer game, like make it more feel like something on the computer. Whereas if you're talking to maybe like French learners, you probably have more coffee shop, restaurant, walking promenade type B-roll. The B-roll changes just literally depending on certain affinity. And I think this is also a really good way to, as a business owner or as a copywriter working with the business, to like figure out what are the affinities that the audience has. Like, what are those little insights, like your client or you as a business owner, like what are those things that audience that's following you, what is like a thing that a lot of them all have? I mean, for me with copywriters, I know a lot of copywriters love traveling. A lot of marketers love to travel, and I love traveling as well. So it just happens to be that I'm the same as, I got attracted to marketing and copywriting literally because I wanted to travel to Japan, right? So I kind of came into it because I wanted to travel the world, and I didn't want to sit in a corporate job or be on the phone all day. I wanted to do my work and then travel. So, the fact that the content now, a lot of the content I produce is photos of me or videos of me traveling and then sharing concepts, I think it really resonates with the audience. And this is how you create differentiation, definitely, being able to do that. Let's go into some tactics. I'd love to know from you, like how you tactically thought about, I mean, your thumbnails and your titles, and you're probably going to say that you just kind of like lucked your way through it, but there must be some insights there, because I was always like clicking your videos. You always caught me as a language learner. I always was like, oh, I want to watch that video. Like that looked cool, I don't know. There was something with your thumbnails. Always felt quite fresh,
I mean, yeah, I really at the time was not thinking about it at all. Like, I had no conception of like click-through rate or like anything in my mind at the time. I mean, I think with the titles, I mostly was just giving it the most accurate title possible a lot of the time.
But that's insight. That is marketing, because it's like if you're going to give a piece of content an accurate title, you're solving a problem that the market actually has, that they're emotionally invested in, and your content delivers that, then your title reflects the piece of content. It's congruent. And that's like the biggest thing I would say that, YouTube cares about and marketers care about is, make that title congruent with the first 30 seconds of the video. So
yeah, like when I think about it now, yes, I mean, all my videos that performed really well in hindsight had pretty good titles and thumbnails, but it feels really lucky. Like there's other videos where like the thumbnail was really terrible and it didn't get a lot of views, and I at the time I really didn't have a marketing mindset, so I didn't think what would someone click on if they were scrolling. I just thought like, what would look nice, and I was like, oh, I think this looks nice. And I didn't realize it was actually really boring or not eye-grabbing. It just looked nice. So I remember there was actually a big insight when I was like, oh, there's actually a big difference between like something that someone would want to click on and something that looks nice. Sometimes it's both. Sometimes it's one or the other. Sometimes it's a super ugly thumbnail, but you're like so curious. You're like, I have to watch. What is this? I have to watch this. So yeah, I mean, I think with the thumbnails, a lot of times it was just, I mean, if anything, out of laziness, they're very basic a lot of the times. And, sometimes just having someone's face really big is, can can work because it's clear what's going on. If it has a good title, then faces kind of can naturally stand out. And I think sometimes if they're not over engineered, it also can give that authentic vibe, of like it like it makes you like if it's just a thumbnail of some guy's face, like it literally just looks like they just randomly took a snapshot from the middle of the video and that's the vibe, then they get the vibe of like, oh, this is gonna be an authentic video because it's just a guy who turned on the camera and started talking. Sometimes my original videos kind of maybe had that. But yeah, I mean, the thing is, my videos never went viral. Like, I think I only have like one video that has over 1 million views. The thing is, the people that really cared about this stuff would find it. And then for those people, I think the fact that I just titled the videos in a very straightforward way worked.
So over the years, each video still continues to collect views then? Because you have videos, I mean, they might not be viral, but you've got videos with hundreds of thousands of views.
Yeah, well, actually, like after I had my, the kind of marketing mishap of where I tried to sell this product and it kind of blew up and got a ton of really bad press, I left YouTube and didn't upload a single video for a couple years. And over that couple year span, my subscriber count actually doubled, even though I didn't upload a single video. Like, I think I had a little over 100K when I went on the hiatus, and then over the course of like 2 years, I went to over 200K subscribers.
It's crazy.
And I
mean, this is amazing. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think it's because like a lot of at the time I was I was always on the cutting edge. I was talking about these ideas that still were like not accepted yet, and then over time, finally the rest of the market started to catch up, and when it did, my videos were all there for people to go and watch, and so yeah, I kind of, in a way, it kind of feels like unfortunate that like I could have rode that wave even more if I was active during that period of time when like everyone was suddenly figuring out about immersion learning and I was like the expert on it, and now this kind of now that I'm coming back to YouTube, I kind of get this vibe of like there's everyone knows about it now. Not everybody, but like a lot more people know about it. There's other people talking about it. It doesn't have this vibe of like this new thing that not many people know yet, and it's like this new cutting edge thing. So the market is like a little more like it's matured more, and that's going to make it like a little bit harder to stand out. But I still think I have a lot of new ideas that no one's talking about yet within that domain. Plus, I have my reputation that I can build on still. So I still think I have I think the biggest arc is yet to come in terms of like the influence that'll have in the language learning world.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. I think you've got, we've had chats and, you've shared a lot of stuff with me offline as well. And I think, very, very cutting edge language learning perspective for sure. It's interesting that you talk about this trend and how the market sophisticated and became more aware of these types of solutions. And that just happened to be also when the videos exploded in popularity, and it had nothing to do with you changing the thumbnails or titles or any marketing strategy. In fact, you could even argue that doing nothing to the old videos is almost the best thing, because they were almost created a few years in advance of, they were actually made for 2022 or 2023, not made for 2018 or 2019, right? It's like that is, I think that's one of the benefits of being a thought leader, is that, you might be at the front. Being a thought leader by definition means sometimes that your content's going to get less views up front because you're talking about something that not many people are on the same wavelength of, but when it becomes the relevant topic, you've been talking about it 3-4 years in advance. That's when it starts to take off. And I've seen that. I've seen actually many business owners, many thought leaders, they'll talk about a certain topic, like in the health space, for example. There's a lot of these different diets and a lot of these different approaches to, getting shredded. And then within 2 or 3 years, and suddenly only 2-3 years later, that becomes the diet that, is in fashion, or the health protocol or whatever, that becomes the trend. And then everybody sort of jumps in then. And that's just difficult, I think, for many marketers, because a lot of marketers are very short term in their marketing strategy. It's like, let's do this sale and let's close the doors tomorrow and like try to get everybody to jump in right now. But it's, well, if you just prioritize the long-term growth, you're actually going to benefit more. So yeah, so that is interesting. it's cool that your videos had such an impression later on.
Yeah, and I think overall, like in terms of like just to close on the titles and thumbnails and stuff, like I think ultimately I always did a not great job on the packaging, and I actually think it would have served me better to do a little better job, um, as long as I did it in the right way, you know. But ultimately, because the content itself was so good, it built a hardcore following of people, and like a word of mouth did like a lot of heavy lifting for me, because like to the point where people would get, you know, like my fans would get reputations for being annoying even like evangelists, you know. They'd be like, oh, another Matt versus Japan guy, like, you know. But a lot of people knew about me because they'd be arguing on my behalf and linking my videos and stuff. And so I think, yeah, the content, I was able to succeed kind of in spite of poor packaging on my content, because the content was so solid. I think if I had both, like that's what I want to aim for going forward, is like having the right marketing and the right content, then I think that would, you know, totally take it to the next level.
Yeah, because you're with the good marketing, you'll actually be able to talk to those people that really want to see your videos, and you're preparing them just for them. It's like just made for them. You've also been doing a lot of collabs over the last few years. I mean, I've noticed that a lot more than previously. Could you walk me through that process? Like, how did you go about deciding that you're going to start talking on more shows and getting more involved with other YouTubers, and maybe even some insights on how you actually start some of those conversations with big people, or how they approach you, or just generally how you start creating collabs?
You mean, for on my case, you mean the ones where I'm like speaking in Japanese with Japanese YouTubers, or
It could
or
be
no?
it could be anything. Just having conversations with other bigger names. Like, do they all approach you, or do you approach some people? Like, is their intention, like, how did you start becoming more than just your own channel?
Well, basically, my policy, I mean, I think I've actually always done a lot of collabs, relatively speaking.
Mm.
And my policy was basically to just never turn anyone down. So, like, even if there was a really tiny channel with like 100 subscribers, if they wanted to collab, I'd always do it, because hey, it'd show up in search, you know, maybe some people would see it. And I feel like also doing collabs helped me get better at talking about my ideas to like a new audience, because you know, when someone interviews you, it's for like a new audience. And so, you know, I'd have to kind of sort of reformulate my ideas, or be able to explain them in a succinct way that makes sense to somebody that's hearing them for the very first time and doesn't have any other context. And so practicing that over and over, I think helped me get better at that craft. And that was also maybe part of what helped my channel take off, because a lot of people would first be introduced to me through one of these videos where they kind of would get a little bit caught up onto speed, just because I'd give them kind of the digest version, and then they'd go jump into my content. And so yeah, as I was growing, I would always like, I would rarely do like a completely blind, like cold reach out, but whenever there was an opportunity, I would jump on it. So like if ever a YouTuber left a comment on one of my videos, I would reach out to them and be like, oh, thanks so much for commenting. Like, we should film a collab. And generally that would work out. Or like if I just saw someone followed me on Twitter that also had a channel, I would always message them and be like, we should collab. So I was pretty proactive about that. And there were maybe even some times where I did like a totally cold outreach. I just send someone an email like, hey, I'm a fan of your content. I have this YouTube channel. Do you want to like film a video? And a lot of times they would, you know, be interested, and we'd film the video too. And so, yeah, I guess, yeah, I was always I kind of just felt like the more I'm out there on YouTube, the better for the, you know, for organic growth. So I kind of, try to be proactive about it. And then in terms of recently, like initially, because like you mentioned, I didn't have a lot of videos of me speaking Japanese, and I always knew I was really good at Japanese, but also, like I mentioned, the Japanese learning community is really like, has a particular, you know, quality to it, where like everyone wants to tear you down. I mean, this is kind of just the internet in general, right? If you're on top, everyone wants to tear you down. So I was like paranoid that if I made a video of me speaking Japanese and had like even made like one mistake, everyone would, you know, make clips of it and be like, so look, Matt's not really good, he made a mistake. And, you know, I was like really caught up on this like, you know, perfectionism of like, I have to maintain this image that I'm like completely perfect at Japanese. And I think moving to Japan a couple years ago, like I basically moved to Japan during my YouTube hiatus. And when I moved to Japan, it really helped me realize that like I'm insanely good at Japanese. Like, sorry to not be humble, but like you meet lots of
I think
foreigners
you've kind of
here.
earned it, bro.
Yeah.
You've earned it at this point. You've spent enough years, you can say that. Yeah.
Yeah, so like, and the other thing too is like when I was in America on the internet, the only people I'm comparing myself to are like the other best of the best, like the other couple YouTubers that speak like incredible Japanese and have a big following. So like, I'm comparing myself to the other like 0.1% of like really
Right.
good people, or 0.1%. And then when I went to Japan, I meet the average foreigner and I see how the average Japanese person reacts to my Japanese on a daily basis. And it made me realize like, well, yeah, I'm not perfect. No one's perfect, but like I'm insanely good at this. And I kind of just stopped giving a fuck. And so then I started being on a lot of Japanese people's channels too, because I was like, I'm as good as I am. There's no, you can go and like my true ability shows up in the content. Of course, I'm not going to be literally perfect, but like I guess before I was trying to like show myself as being as good as possible and like always present myself in the best light. Whereas now I'm like, well, I'll just give you a million samples of me speaking. You can average it out and like get a sense of my ability. Maybe one of the 10 videos I didn't sleep well that night and I don't sound as good, but like now there's if I'm on like enough channels, you get a sense of my real ability, right?
Yeah.
And I started to just be kind of comfortable with like, yeah, I'm as good as I am. It's very good. It's not perfect, but it's good enough that I can back up all the claims that I'm making, basically. So
Yeah, I think yeah. There's a lot of inflation on the internet for like status inflation or like results inflation, with like business coaches, for example, in 2018, it was enough to call yourself a millionaire if you're a business coach. By 2021, it's like you have to be 8-figure, you have to be at 10 million and above. And nowadays it's like, unless you're 9-figure, bro, what are you even doing, right? So there's just this result inflation. And I think part of it, I talked with quite a few marketers. It's just that when you have enough content on, let's say, like Instagram and you're scrolling as a consumer, would you want to see a guy that makes $1 million a year when 100,000 people are making $1 million a year and creating that content? Or would you rather see content of what life looks like at $100 million because there's only 3 people that can create that type of content? So the algorithm almost forces the market to start raising that like expectation of the kind of content, but it's not really a realistic expectation. And I think that what does ironically happen with many marketing, with a lot of marketing, especially like organic marketing, is the further you go with that inflation, the less relatable, which actually creates this counterweight where there's all these smaller people that actually become more interesting again. So you get all these guys at 9 figures now. Let's just talk business coaching for making money with a business. Everybody likes those guys. Maybe they look at them as an inspiration, but they never relate or they never see themselves as like, this is somebody I could become. Whereas now there's a guy that's like at $1 million per year again. And he's like, yeah, I'm not the guru. I'm not the big 100 million, but I had an interest in, I don't know, let's say like whatever it is. I had an interest in this, that, and the other. And I'm just going to share with you my journey. And suddenly those channels, even though they're a lot smaller, people actually find that more relatable. So I almost wonder if that approach that you've had also gives people this taste of like, yeah, because if you were perfect at Japanese, people might just think that then it's like a genetic thing. It's like, not only is he a brilliant language learner, but like his brain is far beyond anything I could ever do. Whereas seeing you not being perfect at the language might actually be like, okay, so it's just a time investment thing. I think I can do it then,
Yeah, I mean, I think you make a really good point, and the principle that you just said is totally valid. But I think in this particular case, like the thing that makes all this like language learning content way more, well, actually, maybe it's actually comparable in certain ways. But basically, the thing is, if you don't speak Japanese to like an extremely high level, you can't tell how good I am, and I will appear perfect to you. So
True.
and I could be at a lot lower level than I actually am, and I would still appear perfect to somebody who's only been learning Japanese for like a year, right? So like, and there, and because of that, it's very easy for somebody to pretend that they're much better than they are on YouTube, right? Like if you can go and make a couple of videos of you speaking like very poor Japanese, and just be like, yeah, I'm fluent and I learned Japanese in a year, and a lot of people just fall for it because they're like, he sounds fluent to me. Whereas if you show to me or like a Japanese person, I'll be like, oh yeah, he sounds like he could barely hold a conversation, So you can't tell because you literally don't speak the language, so you don't know whether the grammar is accurate or like there's this really funny phenomenon of like whenever I speak Japanese to like an American person that doesn't speak any Japanese, the first thing they'll say is, wow, your accent is so good. And I'll be like, well, how do you know? You don't even speak Japanese. Like, for all you know, I could be speaking Japanese with the thickest Chinese accent you've ever heard, and you wouldn't be able to tell. Because really all they're
True.
doing is that, oh, it doesn't sound like English. It doesn't sound
Right.
Englishy. That's like all they're judging on, but they don't know whether my pitch accent's accurate or like all these other things. So yeah, there is also this sense of like, I mean, to most, to like you'd have to basically be very fluent to even notice that I'm not perfect. And in that case, you're not even in my target audience anyway. So there also kind of is that too. I mean, people try to figure it out and stuff like that, but that also makes it, that's why there's kind of like a lot of, you know, silliness in the language learning community of people making big claims that aren't really true. And now, again, the market's getting more sophisticated. So like people used to fall for that way more back in the day. Now there's other YouTubers that basically make videos trying to verify the claims of other people when they say like, oh, I speak 8 languages and here's my video. Then there's this other guy who has been making these videos where he's like, actually, I've like verified with native speakers of all these languages. He speaks these ones at this level, some at this other level. So like, again, as the market gets more sophisticated, you can't fool people as much. But yeah, I mean, I think like, yeah, like if I was literally perfect, I think people would assume that I'm actually grew up in Japan. I'm lying, So I'm good enough to the point where, you can tell that I taught myself the language, but also that there's like almost nobody that reached the same level. And even, yeah, I mean, for me, being able to be more open about even my own shortcomings, for me, it's been really liberating, first of all, because before when I tried to like put up a front that I was literally perfect, I mean, not literally, but I would try to like always show myself in the best light. That like put a lot of pressure on me as well. But also it's the type of thing of like some people, they're like, oh, he's not even totally perfect. Oh, then like, fuck that guy. There's some people like that, but there's other people that are like, oh, he's being really genuine. He's like being totally like the fact that he admits that he's, not perfect and has these certain weaknesses, that makes me trust him more, because
Yeah, it's relatable.
It's more, more relatable.
Authentic,
so
genuine. Yeah.
yeah. So, and then also that allows me to be like, you can literally be even better than me. Like I've learned from my mistakes. Like I've improved my method past, like there's some people that are like, oh, but his recommendations are not exactly what he did. And I'm like, well, yeah, I'm trying to make you get even better results. I'm trying to improve the things that I did wrong. If you do exactly what I did, you're only going to get to where I was. Whereas I think you can, people can get even higher if they, learn from my mistakes.
Yeah, it is funny that the language community, I mean, you'll see a few people, they'll say like, oh, I learned French in 3 weeks. And for the average person watching the video, they'll see this video and, like even the subtitles are always written in perfect English, right? Because you're translating it. But that doesn't mean that the actual language is perfect. It's just the subtitles that are perfect. The way that they said it in the foreign language, they mixed up all these words and like, I'm definitely not at the level where I can say that I'm like near native level, but I'm definitely good enough to distinguish between a native sounding person and a non-native sounding person in most of the languages I've been practicing. And a lot of these polyglots, or a lot of these people that are claiming certain levels in the language, sure, whatever. But when I listen to them, I'm not particularly impressed by their French or by their Italian, or especially by their Japanese. Majority of people that say that they speak Japanese and they're polyglot.
Yeah.
It's like, bro, you like with Japanese, it's like one of those languages. It's like if you start Japanese, that's it. There's no other language you're going to be learning for 10 years if you want to get actually any level of proficiency, because it's freaking difficult. But this goes back to any thought leadership, especially for you watching this. I know maybe you're not learning languages and you're more thinking about business growth. I think it's the same thing with business coaches, with health coaches, with any sort of market, is that sophistication. The market gets more and more sophisticated. And over time, there's this, it's really nice. We've got a really great data set with you, Matt, right? You've got 10 years or even more, right? I think you've got over 10 years now, right, of being in this industry. Is that data set shows how a business evolves. And if you want to be in the game for 3 to 5 years, yeah, you can make those aggressive claims year 1, year 2, and try and capture as much of that market share as possible. But over 10 years, that market is going to sophisticate to the point where that initial content now actually starts working against you because you've made all these promises that the market's now aware of. So for example, the guys that used to sell this, let's say business coaching, back in the day, they could talk about the Lamborghini and the whatever apartment and the mansion and stuff. It was very tactical, very short term. Now people will be like, oh yeah, well, we all know today that tactic is you're renting that supercar and you're renting that super mansion or whatever. and you were just using it to, like, it was manipulative, it was like tactical, it was short term. Now those people, for those videos, it actually discredits them because it's like, oh, it's just another guru. Whereas the people that didn't compromise and didn't do those things may have got less views in the short term, but they're actually still here today, still, talking about business or whatever it is that their topic is. And actually that is such a, if there's anything that I think we can take away from this conversation from a marketing standpoint is just how the long game really completely is different than the short game. And if you play short game, you're never gonna be able to survive in a market that continues to sophisticate, continues to increase skepticism. You're going to get so many people constantly challenging your previous perspectives, and you won't be able to handle it. So better to grow a little bit slower and be authentic than to try these short-term appealing tactics that the market will eventually destroy you for, like that is very, it's very interesting.
Because it can become your strength in the long term, right? Like that's what kind of happened to me is, I'm assuming most markets get more sophisticated over time. And the more sophisticated they get, the less that bullshit flies. And so, in the beginning, when you're doing short term, maybe if you bullshitting will help you make those short term games. But like in my case, I didn't view it as playing the long game. I just viewed it as, I just wanted to be authentic for the most part. And so that's what I did. And then later, when the market got more sophisticated, then my content actually increased in value rather than the opposite happening, right?
Yeah, that's cool. Like that's the best part, is that if you do it this way, all the work you did for all those years actually elevates you because you're actually building content for the future. And I actually talked to copywriters about this. Not going to plug my offer, but basically, like, I talk about this in my private offer, right? It's like, you don't want to just do levels 1 to 5 of sophistication. You actually always want to be thinking about the future sophistication of your marketplace, and you actually want to include that in your marketing, even if they're not there yet, because the way that we do content and branding today, you if you build for that, then when the market reaches that level, you're already first to market because you're the only person that's actually catered to that sophistication, and it actually works in your favor. Like with your YouTube videos, you've got all those videos from all those years ago, they were built for the future. Then you're already first to market because you've already got 20 videos that took you a month to produce each that are all ready to go. As soon as the market reaches that trend, you catch it. It's cool. It's very, very cool.
Yeah, I doubled my subscriber count without making a single video, basically.
That's cool. I'm going to add that. I'm going to definitely add that to the intro, that little piece. We're definitely going to put that piece in the intro. It's like, I love it. Anything else that you would share that along your journey that you think would be quite useful for somebody that's growing an audience of qualified, your target audience, like something that you would have told your younger self?
Told my younger self. That's interesting. I think I think the biggest takeaway that you can take from my experience is that having a really good core product and like core or service, whatever it is, like core solution to a problem that can do almost all the heavy lifting, as long as you have that. And I guess also that you have to make sure you sometimes you don't even understand why something's working yourself, right? And that can be pretty dangerous because then you can mess it up, which that's what happened to me one time, right? So I think that's why I think learning about these things is important, because then you can understand why things work when they work and why they don't when they don't, so that you can, iterate efficiently in that sense. And I'm not a marketer by trade, so I think you'll probably be able to come up with.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I think
extract more wisdom from my story than I can.
What is I'll ask you one last thing, and then I think that's a lot that people can take notes on. I think this is like seriously, this is the kind of stuff that you can take cross industry. If you're a marketer or business owner, there's so much you can learn from like Matt's experience and pull it into a market that doesn't think about this. Like this idea of, predicting the future sophistication and creating content for it a year or two in advance. That's a thought leadership concept that I think it's like a top 1% concept. I don't think I've ever heard that anywhere. Literally the first time we've talked about this is like, that's very, very, and that's powerful. That, so there's a lot of stuff that we can pull, but what's the, you love this industry. You love helping people with Japanese. You said you want to get to the point where you create packaging that also reflects the content and gives it the the love it actually deserves. Like, what is your goal or like vision for like where you want to be a few years from now and in this community, and how do you want to be seen and contribute to it?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I have a kind of package of ideas that I had during my hiatus, and so they're not reflected in any of the content on my channel. So I guess, yeah, I want to kind of repeat the whole cycle that I did with these new ideas, so that these new ideas are understood more broadly and get into the hands of the people that it's going to benefit them, the people who like want to get as good as possible at Japanese or another language. And yeah, I want to do that in a way that will help me, make a lot of money in the process.
Yeah, and help a lot of people. It's cool. Yeah. Yeah, it's cool. So I mean, it's kind of funny. Where can people find you is what I usually ask people at the end of an interview, but I think it's going to be quite easy to find you. But where can people find you if they want to see and they want to learn and they want to just see your journey and like how you do thought leadership for your community and your marketplace?
Yeah, well, so there's the YouTube channel we've been talking about this whole time, which is Matt vs. Japan. And then, yeah, since January, I've been running a school community called the Immersion Dojo. And yeah, I mean, if you actually are trying to learn Japanese or another language and you're interested, then yeah, definitely check that out. And yeah, I have a second channel that I've been posting videos to that, yeah, are kind of going for that more sophisticated audience. But if you're new to this, they probably won't be very interesting.
Immersion Dojo is a nice name.
Yeah, I was partly inspired by your school community.
Yeah, it's cool. No, it's good. I love it. I think I'm happily in there, happily learning from you and improving at languages. And I think that, there's actually a lot of marketers and copywriters and business owners that want to learn a second language or maybe a third language if they grew up with two languages or learn a language in school. And there's a language that would enrich your life, because you do all this marketing and you got all this business stuff figured out, but there's probably a lot of other things that you want to experience outside of it. And of all the language learners and experts in this industry, I think you're the thought leader, I would say, of like all language learning. I think everything that actually works to become proficient in a way that you don't compromise on like, you don't build bad habits, you don't learn stuff that isn't necessary, and you don't actually spend hundreds of hours on like Duolingo or something. The way you approach languages is definitely the most efficient. So if anybody wants to learn a language, I would highly recommend you do it the way Matt's dedicated his entire life to this. Is like he knows what he's talking about, like very, very sharp.
Yeah, like all the principles you were talking about thinking as long term as possible. That's how I approach language learning. So yeah, if you want to get quick gains and have sound like you speak a certain language after a couple months, then that's like not my content is not for you. If you're like in it for the long game and you want to, basically avoid making bad habits that are going to be hard to fix and move straight towards like native level fluency, then I think I'm one of the only people that, really optimize for that.
I think you'll actually spend less time with the language this way and get more results, even though, you don't talk about like the short-term gains. You actually do win in the long term. Like for the amount of hours invested, the hours are better, that they're like higher quality investment, like each hour you invest with the language this way, it actually goes into it goes into your brain versus sitting in some like theory box, like that's a lot of the people like learn the theory of the language versus actually learn the language. They spend all their time studying the idea of a language, right? There's like, oh, let's think about all the, like the Wikipedia page for French. They explain how French works, but like no French person knows the Wikipedia page. They just know the language because they grew up with it. So it's like, do you want to learn the theory of the language, or do you actually want to internalize the language like your own language, right? And that is like one way to summarize your approach, right? Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, and I mean,
well, thank you so much.
I could talk about language learning forever.
Yeah, we could.
We'll never get out of here.
But we'll have to do that maybe in Japan next time I'm there. Yeah. I'll come and we'll talk about Japanese and we'll talk about language learning. But yeah, thanks so much for jumping on the show. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, see you.
Thanks for extracting wisdom out of my story I didn't even know was there.
Of course, bro. Chat soon, man.
Later.